Well, thank you again for being here. I'm Scott Cullen. My partner and I developed Solomon, which is the homepage that you see on your screen. Today, we're going to be talking about how to do more complex assignments, namely uh, a retrospective appraisal, where we need to have land sales from the effective date of the appraisal, which might be a few years back, and also cost data from a few years back. So we'll talk about that. The next thing that we'll do is work on something with an ADU. That's becoming pretty popular in some places. So I'll show you how I would handle an ADU with Solomon. I'm not sure it's the best way. I've talked to Tim Anderson a little bit about those, and I think his comment was something about the sunshine of appraisal oversight has not reached that level yet. So there's still some open ideas being considered. By the way, Tim is with us today. He's going to be showing at the end a different way to get to a land value. He's got a nice workbook, a worksheet, an Excel file about using assessor data to, support a site value. And site value, of course, is kind of the key whenever you're dealing with the cost approach. So here is our agenda for today. Complexity, site value with Solomon forecast. We're going to first do a 29-acre parcel, which is complex on its own. And this is a case that I handled about 3, 4 months ago. It was an electrician and his wife had a business. She was the business manager and he was the tradesman. And they had a 29-acre parcel with a big shop on it for the business and also a house that was aging. But it was the principal part of it was the 29 acres. So we figured out how to do that with forecast analysis. And then we'll also do a small, like a typical city lot, a 0.4 acre site. Then once we have the retrospective site values, then we'll do look at the building cost historical index. That's part of the data we get from National Building Cost. It's on a page at the end of our user manual. And then we'll look at how to do an ADU, a single family house with Solomon cost, and then how to figure out the cost of the ADU, and then use the depreciated value of the ADU as an accessory building. I think an ADU can be treated as an accessory building. So I'm going to start by opening up Solomon. I've got it bookmarked, and then Chrome will let you save uh, passwords. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to forecast analysis, and we're going to do that 29-acre parcel. So on forecast, we type in the value of the subject property that we're looking for, in this case, acreage. And just to show you um, that I'm not cheating, this is an actual case. Here's the data from Denmark Township. It's in Washington County, Minnesota, right along the beautiful St. Croix River. So you can see we've got a 2.37 acre site that sold for 120. And these sold back near the effective date of the appraisal from, I think it was August, the end of July, actually. So I kind of bracketed it within a year, added another month or so. But 147.9 for 2.9 acres, 209 for 4.9, 375 for 20, et cetera, all the way down to 850,000 for a 60.88 acre site. Now, this land cannot be subdivided. It's all in ag preserve. So it's you can do some farming on it, but it's not really enough to be a productive farm. It's more land with a building. So I'm going to start with acreage up here. And then the independent variable is the size of the acreage. So we have this 2.37 acre site that sold for 120. And then a 2.99 that sold for 147,900. And then a 4.9 acre site that was 209. A 20-acre site, so we're jumping up pretty quickly here. 20-acre site is 375, and the 45-acre site is 700. And last, we've got the 60.88 site at $850,000. So if I've got those numbers typed in properly, we've got 120, 147, 209, 375, 700, 850, then 2.37, 2.99, 4.9, 20, 45, and 60. Okay. Now I've got the subject site here, the 29 acres. When I click forecast, it makes this scatter plot. And the way to interpret the scatter plot is that this line fits very well through those data points. The slope of the line is $12,334. So for every acre, there's an additional value of $12,334. This 1.205 times e to the fifth, that's like saying around $120,000 for the right to build a house. In other words, a lot big enough to handle the septic and well and so on. R square, we've talked about that. So that's the coefficient of determination. So 94% of the change in this predicted variable, that's another word for dependent variable, is due to the change in these predictor or independent variables. So that's something you can take to the bank. I've got a site size, I've got a site value to do the cost approach and also an adjustment rate of 12,333 to actually do the grid. Now, we don't see those very often. A more typical case would be something like just a normal city lot. I'll call that just a site. And let's say, and this is not a real case, all right, I'm just going to make this one up. So 0.25 acre, we have a sale that was $70,000. And again, these are from the retrospective date. These go back however long the retrospective effective date was. We've got a 0.33 that was at 75 and a 0.5 that was at $87,000. And the actual subject itself, it's going to be 0.4. So when I click forecast, the calculation actually happens, and we've got an $80,000 site value. Now, I would not use this for a site size adjustment. I would do it after you had the parcels in the grid or with other adjustments made before you use something like sensitivity analysis, maybe. But whatever that is, $68,000, it's an acre, so that'd be like $1.50 a foot. But be careful, don't use that as the adjustment method for the site size. I've tried it, it doesn't work. I think things get complicated when you start improving the site. So we've got a site value. Now we're going to do a retrospective appraisal. There's the note on the forecast analysis for the 29-acre site and the $80,000 site. I wanted to show you this. This is the building cost historical index that's published in the back of the user manual. It starts at 1957. If you open the user manual, you will see 1957, 1958, and so on, all the way up to 2024. I just put this together so you wouldn't have to try to see which style building you were dealing with by the time you got to the bottom of the page. But a wood frame building, that's typical. Let's say that we're doing an effective date back in 2021. So if I look across here in this table, I see that there's 1.09. And again, that's an index. What this is intended to do is if you take a known construction cost from 2021 and multiply it by 1.09, you'll get today's cost. So in other words, if it was one, like if you were doing it for this year, it would of course be just one. But there's a 9% upcharge or more cost to go from back then to now. Now that's the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to find, we've got cost data for today, and we're trying to figure out what the cost data was back then. So to do that, I'm going to use my um, spreadsheet here. Here's today, one. Here's the effective date of 2021. The proper way to do this is to use a division. So we're going to divide this by this, 1 divided by 1.09. That's just the opposite of saying 1.09 times the historical cost. And we get this 92%. Now, be careful before you just use 0.08. What you really need to do is say 1 minus this, right? That's the 0.08. So there's the cost change to go from 2021 to 2024. So we'll be using a minus 8 when we get to Solomon and start on the depreciated cost method. So I'm going to go back to Solomon at this point. We'll go to Solomon cost. Let's start with a market value of 300. And I know this makes some people nervous. This could be a comparable. It doesn't have to be the subject. I like to use the subject. We're not using the cost approach as a means to find a value. We're using the analytics of the cost approach to find effective age and adjustment rates. So back to our idea of an $80,000 site back then, right? That we just talked about that. And let's say we estimate site improvements at 20. And I'm going to use my zip code, 55123, and quality rating of 4. And let's say that the GLA is 2,000 square feet. It does have central air. Every house in Egan has a basement, but I'm just going to ignore that because most of you don't deal with basements. Fireplace, 1, and 100 square feet of covered porch. And then 440 square feet of garage, a 2-stall garage. So now when I click calculate, I see that I've got $300,000 as the market value of the house. If 20,000 of that is land, we're down to 280. If we subtract the 80,000 land, we've got a depreciated cost or a contributory value of $200,000. Here's the total cost based on these. Remember, this is an old site value, but this is new cost data. We've got to subtract 8% to get back to the old cost. Notice how the effective age went down a little bit. The house was a little bit newer back then, but this is just how it worked out. I used -8 in the factor. So now I've got retrospective site value and retrospective cost. And here's a retrospective market value estimate that you've developed from comps that came from back at the effective age of the report. So now you've got all the other Solomon features. If you would type 63, I like to use 63%. It's a survey result. It's based on the idea that the house depreciates faster in some areas than others. One area where it depreciates quickly is the 20-year roof, 10-year paint, 10-year carpet, 30-year HVAC. Pretty much, almost everything that you can see and touch in a house is replaced before it's 60 years old a lot of times. So the full bath, the half bath, I don't think those depreciate faster. A fireplace, I think that does depreciate faster, especially the second fireplace. So watch what happens. I've got the adjustment for one fireplace and for a second fireplace. There's the GLA, full bath, half bath. A deck, I use 33% because the lifespan of a deck is typically 20 years. 20 divided by 60 is 33%. So I'm looking at the percentage of economic life of each of these features because the whole house does not depreciate equally. Now here I'm just going to use some logic. I'm going to say the deck depreciates more quickly because of exposure to the elements. The covered porch has less exposure than the deck, but it's still out there in the open. I'm going to use 67, so I'm going a third, a half, two-thirds, and 75%. I can't back that with anything more than just logic. So be careful. Let's say we don't have any carports in the analysis. So here's a nice clean screenshot you can put in your report to support your adjustments for this retrospective appraisal. We've backed off 8% out of the cost, and we've used that site value from a former time. So that's an old site value, that's old cost data. Here's the adjustments, and you should be good to go in the grid. Now, of course, Solomon's cost feature only handles adjustments below the bathroom line in the grid. Those are the cost related items. Above the bathrooms, those you could do with sensitivity analysis. We've talked about that before. So the next one I'd like to tackle is an ADU. So how do we do an ADU in Solomon? Well, the first thing I want to do is take out this factor. Let's do it for today's cost. So I'm going to make that 0, and we'll have to just pretend that 80,000 is the site value today, just for an example. So to do the cost approach for an ADU, it hinges a lot on how you consider the ADU. It's not part of the house. It's not part of the land. So it is a site improvement. So I'm going to go to Solomon Cost New. So we've got an ADU that's 500 square feet. The zip code is 55123. The quality level is a 4. So, and it does have heat and air conditioning. So that's all you need to get the replacement cost of a 500 square foot ADU. There's no land. It's just $121,000. And that is all we know about the ADU at this point. Now, if the market pays 100% of its cost, then we would have to add $121,000 to the site improvements. In this case, remember we had 42% depreciation, kind of an older house. The market's paying 58% of the value. Now, it's not necessarily true, but if the market is paying 58% of the cost of that ADU, here's the ADU. So I'm going to pop up my calculator here. It went to the wrong part of the screen. There it is. So 0.58 times 121,463. So the market is paying $70,000, let's say. That's a good estimate. We think it's in the same condition as the subject. So let's say 70,500 is what is being paid for the ADU in the market. So we go back to Solomon cost. Remember, we're adding that $70,500 to the site improvements. So this becomes 9,500. And the adjustment that you would make, because the market's paying 70,500, it would be 370,500. So now we click calculate, and we've got pretty much the same adjustments for the house itself. There's a site improvement of 70,500 that's already depreciated, right? We already did the depreciation. So that's what you would, I would handle it this way. I would put that accessory dwelling unit as an accessory building right in the site improvements. If you want to see a video of this webinar, you'll find it here probably by Friday. We're going to choose between, which was the better webinar, make a recording on YouTube, and if you click on this, that will link you right to a series of videos about the webinar. It's a playlist. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I was going to go to links. This is an important spreadsheet. This will take you to a presentation by Tim Anderson about his way to do or to support site value using ratio analysis. So at this point, I want to, this is how you get it. You can also just look at his website or his YouTube, but I'm going to stop sharing at this point and introduce Tim. There's Tim. So Tim, if you would like to describe that for the folks in the room, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The elevator pitch is quite simply, you're in a neighborhood, you don't have a lot of you don't have any land comps. What do you do? Well, the easiest thing to do is to go to the property assessor's office and take a look at the assessments. And here's a simple example. You find a house that is generally similar to the subject. Its total assessment is $1 million, and the site is assessed at $650,000. Well, that's 65%. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to get a representative sample of those from the neighborhood, and then say that the typical site assessment is 70%. We're pulling that out of the air. Well, then what you're going to do is you're going to take your value via the sales comparison approach or the contract price or whatever, and multiply that by 70%. So let's say you said the house was worth $2 million. Then under that logic, the site itself, were it vacant, has a value of $1.4 million, which is 70% of $2 million. And is that the finest way to come up with a vacant site value? No. Is it the only way to come up with a vacant site value? No. Is it one way to come up with a vacant site value? One accepted way? One way that the appraisal of the literature recognizes? Yes, it is. And that's why we do it. And then again, if you're on Scott's website and you go to resources and you go to links and then you go to whatever it is Scott brought up there and click on that, you can watch the video. And the video explains everything. Again, it's kind of an elevator pitch. But then again, I'm also available for consulting with you if you want to go even deeper on it. But we do have that problem. How do we come up with a site value when there aren't any site sales in the neighborhood? And there are 6 ways. The GSEs recognize 3, and this is one of them. So there's reason to go over it. There's reason to master it. And as we master it, then our clients tend to go, hey, I want to call Kathy. I want to call Bill and for an appraisal. I don't want an AVM. I don't want a BPO. I want an appraisal. And I want one of them to do it because they know how. And what Scott's doing here is to help you with that. And what I'm doing on my spreadsheets is to help you with that. So again, that's the elevator pitch. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And Scott, thank you.
Tim, you're welcome. I'm going to go back to Solomon for a minute. Again, to find Tim's, it's links, ratio analysis with Tim Anderson. There's training opportunities. I'd like to talk about this one a little bit. I had a call from an appraiser yesterday that had gotten a letter from his bank, the bank that he did the appraisal for. The bank was asking them to buy back the loan, which never happened to me, thankfully, but it might have happened to some of you. And they provided 3 comparables that he should have used in his neighborhood. So we discussed a few ways to show with Solomon what the depreciation had to be at those sale prices. He was very excited because he was finding that there was $50,000 more depreciation on those comparables that they were suggesting than the ones that he was using. And they were a little bit further away, but they were similar neighborhoods. So anyway, all this to say, send me an email. I'd be happy to go over questions like that or to give you a one-on-one demo of Solomon. Today was a little bit theoretical, but I'm happy to just show you how it normally works for the routine appraisal assignment. And if you want to subscribe, we do have a subscription that is free for 14 days. Just click this button and sign up. There's no credit card required. You would just give us your information so we could reach you by email and so on. So that is what we have for today. Again, I will be making this into a video and posting it on Solomon in those webinar links. And if you come back on Thursday, we'll be doing kind of the same content. Next week, we're going to be tackling things that you wouldn't normally do with single family cost data. Two of the items we're going to be talking about are attached units and also duplexes. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate the encouragement I'm getting from you folks. I get a lot of good reports. So again, thanks, and we will see you Thursday.